Okay, welcome everyone. My name's Ron, I'm an alcoholic. How's everybody doing tonight? Really quick, I just want to give you some information. This group, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown, has a Facebook page. You can look it up, keep you informed of what this group does and what we're providing, the workshops that go on and things that go on in the tri-state area, sometimes up and down the East Coast. So it's a really good way to keep it. We also have a website, so you can just go to Google AA Saturday night 1 hour speaker meeting Doylestown, and it usually comes up on our website and you get to see all the speakers or whatever things we got going on. So it's a good way to stay connected. If you have anything to post regarding AA or any events that are going on, we'd like to have you posted in there. Keeps everybody informed, keeps everybody connected that way. And so enjoy tonight. Where is he? Mr. Nick's going to come up and share this, and have a good night. Don't clap.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a 1 hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday night at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street, 8:30 p.m. in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday night, 7 p.m. to 7:30, right here. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone newer from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name?
Hi, I'm Katie.
Hey, Katie.
Welcome.
Hi, Ray. Alcoholic.
Hey, Ray, welcome.
Pete, alcoholic.
Hey, Pete, welcome. Hey, Matt, welcome. All right, we're glad you're all here. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise their hands. Excellent. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or Ron or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put donations in a jar on the table marked big book and CD donations. If you'd like a CD of any speaker, past or present, see me or Ron before or after the meeting. They are available free of charge. And I've asked Brian to read the preamble. I'm sorry. James? Yes. I've asked James to read the preamble. I got it.
My name is James. I'm an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I'll have Brian come up to read the 12 steps.
Hello everybody, my name is Brian, I'm an alcoholic. Saturday night, 8:30, St. Paul's Lutheran Church, the Conscious Contact Group, the AA 12 Steps of Recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, may direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure those or others. 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry the message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. That's it. All right.
We have a 7th tradition which states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I'd like to pass the baskets. We have no dues or fees, but we do have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops, etc. Also, there is absolutely no smoking on church property. Just take a walk across the street out of direction. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now I'll introduce our speaker, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. Comes to us from New York. His name is Ray B from the Pathway to Power Group. So please, warm welcome.
Welcome, Ray.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ray. I'm an alcoholic. Super nervous right now. I'm really anxious on the way here. Just had a 2-hour ride here. And, I was just, talking to Ron before I came here. I didn't suit up. A little miscalculation there. But, he said, he's like, you've spoken, done a 1-hour speaker before, and like one time before I've done it. And I was like, and this is like my biggest fear, that I'm going to come up here and just go blank and not have a single thing to say. And that was me driving here. What am I doing? Because I even said to my friends, I saw my friends earlier, they're like, oh, what are you doing tonight? I was like, oh, me and my buddy Pete, we're going to, I got to speak at a meeting. He's like, where's that? I was like, Doylestown, Pennsylvania. He's like, Doylestown, where is that? I was like, dude, it's like 2 hours from here, because I'm from the Boggs Neck section of the Bronx. And it's like over 2 hours from here. He's like, dude, you're crazy. Like, why are you going there? I was like, I don't know. I have no idea. I was like, I don't got nothing to say, what am I going to say? And then, I came to realize I was just on a retreat a couple of weekends ago. I was called the Man Up Retreat. It was at Graymore. And had a couple of awesome speakers. There was a guy, Sheldon Finney, I believe, and another guy, Kent Coleman. They were there. The dude, Sheldon, was from Vegas. And, Sunday came along. And I'm like thinking, this guy, he got a wife and kid at home in Vegas, and they said he's going to leave, a little bit early on Sunday because he wanted to get back for 8 o'clock to see his family. And I'm complaining that I got to drive 2 hours. This guy took a trip from Vegas to come and sit with a bunch of dudes from Staten Island and the Bronx to share his experience with the recovery. And I was like, this is nothing, And I don't do this type of meetings, single speakers, but I have a rehab commitment that I bring a meeting to, a men's rehab in Yonkers every other Monday. And I literally sit there, and I brought Pete a few times, and I could literally sit there and talk to these guys for 40 minutes straight and not let them say a single word, just me talking about recovery. So hopefully, somebody can identify, and I'll share my experience, and maybe somebody can get something out of it. But like I said, Ray, alcoholic, have a sponsor, have a home group. My sober date is July 24th, 2012. Pathway to Power meets in Yonkers. Wednesdays 8:15 for a Big Book Step meeting, and Saturdays 8:15 for a Big Book Study meeting. Sponsor guys, home group commitment, and it wasn't always like that for me. I had two trips to AA, kind of. My first time in AA was in 2006. I got in trouble with the law. Never really thought I was an alcoholic, I'm from the Bronx. I was up in the Catskills. My buddy had a house, got in some trouble, flipped a car, a few days in Sullivan County Jail. And I remember getting a lawyer, and he was like, listen, go and get into an outpatient program. Get some letters, make it look good for the court, and then you can, go back to your life. I was like, all right, that's a good idea. And I remember going to this outpatient, and, I wasn't mandated there or anything. I just wanted to, not get in trouble. I had this tremendous fear that they were going to make an example of me, up in the Catskills. Like, here's this dude from the Bronx causing all this trouble. Let's lock him up. I had a couple of charges. And so I'm sitting in this outpatient, they hand out a questionnaire. And like, this is like one of the first signs that I think it kind of first came a blip on my radar that maybe alcohol was an issue for me. It was a questionnaire, like 50 questions. I'm sure like, a bunch of people here have gotten one of these. And it said something vaguely, I don't really remember, it was like 2007 I had this, 2006. If you answer yes to like between 3 and 6, you might be an alcohol abuser. If you answer yes to 6 or more, you're probably an alcoholic. And like I said, I was just, being totally honest. And all these questions, I remember answering yes to like 47 out of the 50 questions. And like, you laughed, and I was laughing to myself as I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is such a setup. They just want to milk my insurance. Anybody would answer yes to these questions. But like now, knowing what I know today about alcoholism, it was like, wow, like I've had this for a long time and didn't even realize it. And, lack of awareness, And so going through that process, I remember also one of the first things, I came back in 2012 and I sat down with a sponsor who went through the big book. And he qualified me, and I had a first step experience with him. And as I did that, I was looking back at all these times along the way, all these, like, I believed God, universe, whatever, gives us these little moments to possibly see, hey buddy, like there's probably a better way for you. This is not going to end well. Here's a chance for you to take a look at this. You want to do something about it, and then just the inability to get honest or to hear a message. And so, looking back, I'm at I was just talking with a buddy. We were driving here, and it was funny because I'm driving with Pete, and one of our friends is calling him as we're in the car driving here. He's like, who's this? A no call ID number. We answer, and it's like, hey Pete. He's like, oh, John. John is in Jacoby Hospital detox, and I ended up spending like 20 minutes on the ride up here, me and Pete sharing about power, choice, and control when it comes to alcohol and other things. And so, like going through this process, becoming aware of what I was suffering from, like looking back, I'm able to see and identify this disease in my life. And one of the things, thinking I have a choice. I always thought I had a choice. I remember being in that outpatient, and I said, I just got there. I was there for a couple of weeks, and I told the counselor, John, I was like, hey, sorry, I'm not going to be able to be at group next Thursday. I got a wedding to go to in Florida. My buddy's getting married. And he looked at me, and he's like, Ray, he's like, I don't think you're ready to be going to any wedding. And I looked at him, and I was like, dude, like, haven't you ever heard of willpower? And like, everybody in that group started laughing. I got so mad. I was like, what is he? I'm dead serious here. Like, why would I mess this up? I got these charges hanging over my head. I'm here to get good letters. Like, I'm going to be good. I'm not going to mess this up. Why would I do that? And then I go to Florida, and I literally did things that I said I would never do. And having that awakening, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. How did that happen? And like, going through this process, I was able to see that over and over and over again. All those times when, doing things I couldn't believe I did. And, going through the process, going through the steps in 2012 was helped me to get a better understanding of what I was suffering from. And I remember, my buddy does this all the time. He's like, hey, anybody here? And he got it from his sponsor. His sponsor got it from his sponsor. And it's just, hey, anybody here remember their first taco? Raise your hand. Everybody's like, look at, he's like, anybody here remember their first drink? And everybody smiles, and, you start to recall. And that was it for me. Like, remembering my first drink and what happened to me. Like, I was this 13-year-old kid, growing up in the Bronx. I had my best friend in school, Anthony, and he was like, yo, we got to go hang out Friday night down by this place called the German Stadium. There was a parking lot, a huge parking lot across this catering hall. It was right by the water, by the Whitestone Bridge. And it was just like no houses, just a catering hall and a huge parking lot with tons of kids water, and he was like, we gotta go there. And I was 13 years old. I was like, all right, yeah, that's cool, let's go. So I remember like we're going there, we're walking, we're coming up, and all of a sudden you start to see kids on bikes, and we're getting closer, and it's just like this parking lot filled, like 30, 40 kids, little pockets of groups of people. And now I'm like sweating, panicking. I'm like, yo, dude, let's go. Like, we don't belong here. He's like, relax. I'm like, dude, I don't know anybody. Like, we shouldn't be here. And there's like kids ranging from like the age of 13 to 19. Like just a parking lot filled with kids, and like I'm freaking out. I'm like things going through my head. It's like two things. One is like, I was like, wow, I am definitely getting my ass kicked here tonight. There was like no doubt about it. Like these kids are looking at me hard. And I remember when we're in the parking lot, I'm standing there, he's trying to introduce me. I'm looking over like these girls, they're like staring at me and laughing. I'm like, oh my God, like what am I wearing? You know, I must look so stupid. What am I doing here? And I'm just like, the total inability to be comfortable in my own skin. And I remember this kid, Glenn, you know, he's going around, he's like, beer run, beer run. And I remember sipping my grandma's beer in the backyard when I was little, this like nasty taste. And that's all I remembered. So when he's saying beer run, I looked at him, I was like, nah, I don't, you know, 13 years old, I'm not gonna drink beer, I don't like the way it tastes. I remember like this big round Irish head with this big smile, he looked me right in the eyes, he's like, come on, you got to. And I was like, all right, you know, like when am I gonna see, I don't know anybody. So like they go and they come back with the quarts of Bud, and you know, like, excuse me. You know, coming back with the quarts of Bud, I remember like now I'm so uncomfortable. All of a sudden, like all of us start drinking, and like halfway through that quart of Bud, what? Are you effing kidding me right now? Like this does that? Who wants to fight? Like where? Like what is that dude looking at? You know? Like where are the girls? What? Like I know they want me. Like this is it. This is what happens. Like, and like yo, if that happens to you, there's no reason you'd be stupid not to do it. But I can't find that place without it. Forget about that place. I can't even relax. And now this makes me a superstar. This makes me who I am, the idea of who I want to be. This erases everything going on at home. Dad smacking mom around, brother, and like this erases all of that and brings me to the place I want to be, desperately seeking. And so now, like, you know, listen, we all gone on our way. And it works. Like my friend Brian shares all the time, it's like alcohol gave me wings to fly, and then it took away my sky. And like, you know, it worked. You know, like the greatest nights of my life involved alcohol and, you know, a couple of other things and some crazy women. The greatest nights of my life. And like, I really wouldn't trade it, but you know, to come to an understanding about like power, choice, and control, and why I'm drinking, you know? And I totally unaware, came into AA when I was 36 with these charges and some trouble, got a year, almost 2 years, the outside world got arranged. I think I always had this belief system going through my 20s and stuff. Like once this job, I meet this girl, this situation occurs. This outside takes this form, and I'm gonna be good. This outside resembles this idea of the life I want, and like, yeah, I'm just gonna settle down. I'll chill, you know, I'll be good. Like that's all this is. I'm just, you know, waiting. And I spent like over 15 years waiting for the outside. And then I come to AA, and within a year, exactly a year it seemed, I remember celebrating a year, I met this awesome girl, you know, AA, home group, coffee commitment. It worked temporarily for like a year. And, you know, my sponsor called it, you know, when I told him I saw him in 2000, this is like 07, so I came crawling back a little bit later on, wanting to die. And I told him about my first experience in AA, and he's like, oh, you hit the trifecta, new girl, new car, new job. And I was like, yeah, and it was awesome. And he's like, and then like as we started reading the book, alcoholism minus the alcohol started to come into play. The irritability, the uneasiness, the restless, the never satisfied, the easily annoyed, like all this stuff started to happen to me, and I had no idea what was going on. And then, almost 2 years by 2008, and then a relapse, and like it's seemingly like one after another. All those, my sponsor today talks about lower level powers, and like all those outside things, like they worked. They kind of kept me sober for a minute, and then they slowly kind of deteriorated and kind of fell off and stopped working. And I was like starting to look for something, looking for outside things to stuff. And, it got back to me, and I found my way back to AA in 2012. I had a buddy in 06 who I palled around with, and he would hit me up periodically. Hey, what are you doing? You ready to come back? I was like, nah, don't worry, I'll call you when I'm ready. I'm good. And then, I came back in 2012. It was a crazy, like, that trifecta was funny. It was like a 3-week period, like a domino effect. I remember I woke up one morning, in this great relationship, 4.5 years, and, finally, this is the outside world is arranged, and then she was like, hey, dude, like, I don't know who you are anymore. I'm going to go. Peace. And then, like, I remember, the next week I get to work, and my boss is like, hey, sorry, we're slow. I can't use you. He gives me my check, and then I remember, like, getting my stuff out of this girl's house. I crashed and totaled my car. And it was like all 3 of those things that I used to help me stay sober and give me relief and bring me ease and comfort were gone. And now it's back to me. And just went on a tear, and the wheels came off. And, that lasted almost 3 years maybe. And then I remember calling this dude up, and I was like, hey, buddy, I'm ready to come back. And he's like, come get me. And we started going to meetings. And I met this dude. I was at a big book meeting in Yonkers, and there was this dude named Ryan, and it was Irish Mary. She's like, hey, Ryan, this is Ray. He's a good lad. Help him. And Ryan took my number, and he was like, call me every day. Hey, Ray, how you doing? What meeting you going to? Want me to get you? Day and night, call me. And, for a few weeks, about a week or so, and I remember telling my buddy Bobby, I was like, I met this dude. I think I'm going to ask him to be my sponsor. And he's like, oh, yeah, what's his name? I was like, Ryan. He's like, oh, yeah, I know Ryan. He's a good dude. I was like, yeah, really good dude. He's like, yeah, but, he's a big book thumper. He's like, it's all about God with him. And I was like, oh. Like I thought he was a good dude. Now what do? That was it, done. Like voicemail. That, like no more. I couldn't talk to him no more. Like I didn't need God. I just needed to like stop drinking. I just needed time away in my head. And I remember, dudes calling me every day, then every other day, and a couple of weeks went by, the calls faded. And like in the meantime, I met this other friend through this guy, and I'm palling around with this dude, hitting meetings every day for like a month. And then I developed a real good relationship with this other guy, and he's like, yo, come to my house. I met this dude, he's talking some crazy stuff. And I was like, all right, I'll be right over. And I come in, I walk in the dude's house, and I come around the wall, and there in his living room, sitting on the couch, is Ryan. I was like, like this is embarrassing. And, the dude jumps up, he stretches out his hand, he's like, hey, Ray, I'm sorry. I should have been doing a better job of reaching out to you. And I was like, what? Like, cause like in my head, like kind of my thinking is like, if I see you and you like stop to answer, I'm like, hey, yo, what's up? You don't know how to return phone calls? Like, what's your problem? But instead, like the guy's apologizing to me. And that's when he, like, literally right there, we sat down, and he's like, hey, you think you're an alcoholic? And like, listen, I was broke and I wanted to die. And, he's like, what do you think, why do you think you're an alcoholic? And I started listing all the consequences. all the things that occurred due to my drinking. And he looked at me simply, he's like, like, Ray, it's unfortunate that those things can happen to non-alcoholics. And he's like, there's, certain classification, certain ways to, find out if you're an alcoholic. And like right there, like I literally had a first step experience. But this was no way this was happening until like I hit a bottom. And I had to realize, I realized today, like my bottom wasn't these circumstances. That wasn't my bottom. Like those messed up circumstances, financial, physical, emotional, all those things led me to my bottom. But, this guy shared one time, he's like, everybody's bottom is pretty much the same. And I was like, that doesn't really make sense. Like, how could it's like different, blah, blah. And he kind of put it, he's like, listen, if you don't have like a family and you're a young dude and you can't lose a family, or if you don't own your own business and you can't lose it, or if you can't end up homeless, does that mean you can't hit a bottom? And then when he described the bottom, I was like, oh my God, he's right. Because that was me. And it was the day before I called my buddy to go to a meeting again. I was back at my dad's house, and I wanted to die so bad. I was going to sleep with the razor blade on my dresser. I'm gonna kill myself, and planning how to do it. And then I ended up in the bathroom, staring in the medicine cabinet mirror, crying like a baby, like that unable to breathe type crying. And I was just looking at myself in the eyes, and I'll never forget, it was like the three questions looking directly at myself. What's wrong with you? Why are you like this? How did you get here? I could not answer one of those questions. I had no explanation for how this happened. I couldn't understand. Like 3 years prior, everything was perfect. Perfect. And now here I am trying to figure out how to kill myself. And I don't know why. So now, 120 meetings in 90 days, I still want to die. The first time in 2006, 90 days, I felt incredible. I caught up on all my bills. I got to work on time. I joined the gym. This time, I wanted to die. Literally inside, my soul was done. It was gone. I remember sitting in a meeting, and like anybody, celebrating this month or counting days. And I was like, yeah, Ray, alcoholic, got 90 days today. And everybody started clapping. The guy next to me is like patting me on the shoulder. And inside, I just saw myself like cracking this dude in his face as hard as I could and like just walking out. And like, I can't do this. And I got to a place with like 120 meetings in 90 days, like in that third and fourth month, where I was on the couch with this dude that had an experience with the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, I hear people, my buddy shares all the time, he's like, the first step, means I'm screwed, and then the second step is maybe not. And like for me, it was reversed. The first step gave me hope. The second step, I felt screwed because I didn't believe in God. But sitting on the couch with this dude, and he said to me, he's like, Ray, it's two simple questions. And he read the two questions from, the first paragraph in We Agnostics. If and when you try to quit entirely, you find you cannot. Or if when drinking, you try to control the amount, you find you cannot, you're probably an alcoholic. When he hit me with the allergy, like that effect I got the first time I drank, it was similar. It was like I relaxed in my seat when he said, Ray, 15% of populations wired differently. I don't know where he got this from, but it worked. It got me. Ray, 15% of populations wired differently. Once you put alcohol in your system, your choice out the window. No choice. You can't, no matter how big. Oh my God. Somebody finally explained to me how that happened. Why I drank. I literally sat there and all these drinking experiences started flashing in my head. Growing up on the boulevard, Dogs Neck Boulevard, and I remember like it was yesterday. We had this little wall, secluded spot. We'd set up the vodka, the mixes, the beer ball, and like we're there 8 o'clock. And I know my own name, how much to drink. Tommy's coming with the car at 10:30. His mom and dad go to sleep. He steals the car. He comes and scoops us. We go to the city. We go to Queens, clubs, girls, fights. I have it planned. I know last week I overdrank. I threw up. They all went out and had fun. I know how much to drink now so I could go and have fun. And here's the first cup of beer, the second, screwdriver, done. 10 o'clock comes, I had a dozen beers, I had 10 screwdrivers, I can't stand, I'm throwing up, and it happened again. This is that came into mind when he told me about an allergy. Ray, listen, don't get caught up in like if and here and there you're able to control it. You know? Like when you're controlling it, are you enjoying it? You know? And like I share these experiences all the time to help people identify. I was, older guy now in my 30s, and, I'm struggling with work. My boss says, listen, dude, if you can't show up, I can't use you. And now it's like Tuesday night, and this is like on my buddy's couch when this dude's telling me about the allergy. This story came into my head. And my buddy was bartending in this rundown bar in the Bronx. There's nobody there. He's there by himself. It's like 6:30. He's like, yo, come through. Like, I'm bored. There's nobody here. I'll make you some food. I'm like, dude, I can't. I got to go to work tomorrow. He's like, Ray, it's 6:30. Like, just watch some of the Yankee game with me. And I was like, all right. And in my head, it's like 2 Heinekens, I'm going home. 2 Heinekens, I'm going home. And I remember I get there, and here's the first Heineken, food, second Heineken. And then all of a sudden, it's like 4 o'clock, and I'm helping him with the gate. And he's like, oh, dude, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, we're good, man, all good. And then the next thing I remember, it's like 9 o'clock, and I'm at 9 a.m., bright sun, leaving the after hours, took all the money out of my checking account, had all my checks on the dresser, the car insurance, the cable, the cell phone, and like I had this whole plan. But I went for 2 Heinekens, and now I'm driving, and there's that feeling, that sinking pit, like, oh my God, how did this happen? Like, no idea, like, could not explain it. So now, today, when, like, when the questions are posed to me, it's fine, it's like, yo, do you think you have a choice? And I go to the rehab, and I ask guys, hey, you think you have a choice when it comes to alcohol? Like, don't you think if you had a choice, you would have enacted it before you ended up in the rehab? If I had a choice, wouldn't I have done it before whatever it is for you? Before you get that sinking feeling, if we had a choice? And then he hits me with the second part, the mental part, and he reads the italics to me on 24. And, the alcoholic at certain times is the inability to bring into consciousness with sufficient force the suffering and humiliation of a week or a month ago. Like this, you hear people all the time say, oh my God, they were reading the book and it was my story. Like this had an effect on me. This gave me what I needed to look at something that says God in it. Because like I tell you, when I come in here, like I just got to get time away. I always thought, like, I heard this guy share, it was like, the more time away from it, it was like I was piling sandbags up against this thing. The more time away, the more strength I felt I was getting against it. The less effect it would have, the less draw it would have on me. It was irrelevant, the amount of time. I had a sick spirit, and I learned that when he told me about the mental part. I had another experience where I got in trouble, 3:30 in the morning, I'm there in my car, crashed under the train, and a cop in the pouring rain, like, puts his window down, he looks at me, I was like, oh, buddy, I'm sorry, I couldn't even stand, I'm leaning on the trunk, I was like, oh, buddy, I'm sorry, I got a tow truck on the way, no worries. He looked at me like I was his little son. He looked at me, he looked at my eye, he shook his head like this, like disgust, he put his window up and drove away. I was like, whoa, like how lucky am I? 3 weeks later, $4,500 later, I'm in the Catskills, and I go back, I leave my buddy's birthday party, and I go back out by myself, I flip my car, and now I'm in Sullivan County Jail, punching the walls, and the thought in my head is, if that dude would have got out of his car in the rain and did his job, I wouldn't be in this position right now. Like, that was the legit thought. Like, I was cursing that cop for not wanting to get out in the rain. And he was the reason why. And my mom is now sick in the hospital, and I'm doing 5 days. And that's another thing when it comes to choice. How many sacrifices, that questionnaire in that outpatient, all the things I chose alcohol over. It was insane. Looking back, at the time it seemed totally rational. I remember my mom being in the hospital. If you ask me if I have a choice today, and this is to help us identify. I talk to a lot of guys, and I don't know if they're confused. But it's like, hey Ray, I chose not to drink today. It's like, oh, all right, that's great, but it's not what this is not what we're talking about, Like, I don't have a choice when it comes to alcohol. Given alcohol or the alternative, like I have a choice when I wake up today. Am I going to practice this triangle? Am I a willing member of AA? Do I have a home group? I have a choice if I'm going to participate in recovery. But if I'm not participating in recovery, if I'm not participating in my conscious contact with God, with the universe, like I'm toast. I don't have choice when it comes to alcohol. If I'm running the show. And these are the things I became aware of. Because when I walk in here and I look at that, I see, I like to make dumb analogies, but like, I remember like going into, when I was in like 6th grade, I sit in math class, and like they have like the 8th grade math up there, and it's like, 7 times y equals 20, and I see letters and numbers, I'm like, yo, how the hell letters and numbers? Who does that? Like, how are you getting letters mixed with numbers and getting answers? Like, how does that happen? And that's what I see. I come in here and I see God up there. I'm like, how do you get no drinking with God? It's like, and then the sponsor presents me with a textbook. It's like, here, we're going to figure out how to multiply letters and numbers. I'm going to, they talk about it, uncover, discover, and discard. So I realized that my mind is constantly tricking me. Like, I'm going to totally forget what happened to me last week, and my mind is going to bring me back to it. And I wouldn't have believed you unless I got to that place where I couldn't explain how my life ended up the way it did. And, one of the things that happened to me with my sponsor was, he's like, you think you're an alcoholic? I was like, yeah. He's like, tell me why. I listed all these things that happen with alcohol. And then he looks at me and he's like, Ray, alcohol, not your problem. I was like, dude, like, are you stupid? Like, didn't you just hear? Like, I was drunk when I flipped that car. Like, this all happened because of that. Like, how can you say that? And it was so simple. It was like, Ray, if alcohol is your problem, and I remove it from you, and now, like, alcohol, like, oh, alcohol is your problem? Okay, how about this, Ray? Alcohol, bad, stay away. And now, I remove it from you. Alcohol is your problem? Remove from your life. 30 days, 28 days, 3 months St. Christopher's, whatever. New relationship, 6 months, new job, probation, good. No alcohol, if that's your problem, why you pick it up again? Why? If it's your problem. Like I just told you, write it down, put it in your pocket, put it somewhere so you can remember that it's your problem. Why are you picking it up? Good point. He's like, Ray, there's something going on in here and up here that's bringing you back to it. And that was that 13-year-old kid, that effect, in the doctor's opinion. Men and women drink essentially for the effect produced by alcohol. So wait, maybe it turns out I don't necessarily enjoy guzzling 100 proof Smirnoff. Maybe I don't necessarily enjoy staying at a bar till 4 a.m. when I know I got to be at work the next day. maybe I am chasing something else. And you know, I've had a couple of sponsors over the years. I remember, you know, a sponsor saying to me, Ray, what are you doing in AA? Why are you here? You know, like you've been a taker your whole life. And I was totally unaware of that. I had to get through these steps in order to come to terms with who I am. And it was as simple as just knowing that I'm going to keep returning to it. The second step, I remember I was like, dude, that's the problem. I don't believe in God. And it was as simple as, do you believe that I believe? I said yes. And that was it. Third step was awkward, no profound effect. I just remember when I left my sponsor's house, I was sitting, I was kneeling. He's like, oh, this is the point, this is the part where we usually get on our knees and hold our hand and say the third step prayer. I was like, all right. And I remember leaving his house, I was like, all right, that was really, really weird. Because like I was just like I was on my knees in this dude's kitchen holding his hand, praying to a God I don't believe in. And the only thing I took away from that was like, Ray, you are really desperate. Like you really think you got to do something here for it to be doing that. And then to go through the fourth step, I remember like listing mom, dad, brother, shouldn't have parents, all these things, the harms they caused, how it affected me. And then like, and this was like the turning point in my life. The first, you know, I did 3, 4th, and 5th steps. The first one, he's like, you know, just like excluding the outside world entirely, we're going to focus on ourselves now and see your actions and behaviors. And listen, I did my first 4th step at, you know, 5 months sober. I did another one at 3 years sober, and then I did another one at 5 years sober, or, you know, almost 5 years. And they were all different. Like as time goes on, perception is constantly changing. And, you know, the first 4th step was, you know, there was freedom in that. There was that, I remember driving after doing my 5th step, something happened to me. It wasn't like I was sworn off or I said I don't want to drink. It just, all of a sudden, I just realized one day, I was like, wow, I don't even really think about drinking anymore. You know, I had a home group, I had a commitment. We were running around trying to, you know, we were running around to meetings and, hey, buddy, you know you got an allergy? You know, you have a sponsor? I was into it, you know? I was running around trying to help a lot of people, and the obsession was removed. And then, you know, the next 2 4th steps and 5th steps were helping me become more and more, as time goes on, an observer of myself and what I actually suffer from. It wasn't the alcohol, it was how I act without alcohol. And I had this experience in my last 5th step where it was like, you know, I was with my sponsor Bob, and we kind of like got naked in his office, and there was like 2 things that I didn't share in my prior 2 5th steps that I shared this time. And it was just a total cleansing. And I remember getting to this one resentment, and it helped me to identify how alcohol was, you know, more and more I get to see who I am. And there was one particular resentment in my last 4th step where they asked this question. It says, this resentment you have you ever done to this person what they've done to you, to them, or to another person? And like I had this resentment towards this person that I could never forgive. Like they really, really hurt me. They really like got deep and ripped my heart out. And then all of a sudden, sitting with this man, it's like, hey Ray, have you ever done that? Oh my God. Wow. Like I did exactly that which was done to me 15 years earlier, but 100 times worse, over and over to this girl. And it was just an eye-opening. And that was the first time going forward from that point on. I was now, you know, they talk about entering the sunlight of the spirit. I don't know, like it was just something about my perception changes. This conscious contact, starting to see myself and what makes me tick in 6 and 7. Doing this sex inventory. My sponsor likes to call it a relationship inventory. I start to see how I use the outside world for the same things I used to use alcohol for. And I had an experience with 3 years sober. It was like I relapsed. I share all the time how, you know, when they talk about the alcoholic life seemed the only normal one. Like I used to think it was normal to pay my bills like I'm on the phone 11 p.m., midnight cutoff notice for my car insurance, and I just put $300 in the bank, and I'm like paying my car insurance the day before it gets cut off. Driving around with a glove compartment filled with parking tickets. You know, walking out, is my car towed or is it there? Like this seemed normal. And now 4 years, you know, doing the steps, trying to help others, making some amends, I find myself drifting back. You know, no God, no trust, no reliance on the universe. And it takes different forms. And I see myself in this relationship with this woman and chasing it, wanting it desperately. And it was just like listen, it was like a drug. It was like alcohol. When it's working, it works. When it's not, it's not. She's calling me up. I feel like $1 million. A day goes by, she doesn't text me. It's like, oh my God, what the hell? What did I do? Like, I literally sacrificing not paying my bills to impress her. Buying her dinner every night, taking her out, spending all this money I don't have, neglecting, you know, zero principles. Like, just totally satisfying myself through the outside. And it was just, you know, character defects coming back at me. And so now it's a rededication. You know, it's a constant surrender. And I developed this way of living, and it's growing and growing. And what I thought and how I perceived things 2 years ago, I don't perceive today. I recently did the steps again. I made some amends. And I remember, you know, I had this situation with my dad, and it was like my anger and frustrations towards him. And I would see him, I'd go to the house, and, you know, I'd pass through to see my uncle, and he's sitting in the living room, and we just make this contact with each other, this angry contact. Hey, how you doing? Good, how are you? Good. And like this continued for like months. And I made an amends to him, but I after making my first amends to him, I just started behaving like I used to. You know, not showing up for him, not being there. And, you know, I sat down with him and I made another amends to him. Came up with, you know, it turns out that there was some money I forgot the first time. He never mentioned it. Didn't even want the money. He made a jar for me to put $20 a week in. And I said, Dad, you know, like this thing, like I just feel like you hate me. And he looks at me and goes, hate you? He's like, I thought you hated me. And like I'm going through life with no regards to everybody. I'm just thinking about myself. And the moment I sat with my dad and I had a conversation with him, it turns out like he had all these fears about how he was a father to me. And I ended up sitting there for like 45 minutes listening to him talk about my mom, who passed away in 2009. But that was okay. It was difficult. I listened to it and I got free. And now it's not like perfect, but I constantly get to see myself in others, and I get to see how I behave in others, and it helps me to stay free from them. I go to, you know, I think this program, you know, the where it comes into play most for me is in the workplace and in relationships, and you know, I'm like, I just looked at the time and now I feel like I'm rushing through the steps. But, you know, for like a step 10 for me, you know, to have that pause when agitated, like the workplace is the toughest place for me. And, you know, I have situations with guys that, you know, can be a little confrontational and adversarial at times. And it never fails. Like once I'm able to like swallow my pride and they say pause when agitated, I remember calling my buddy. I was like, yo, dude, like, you're not going to believe this. I just had this altercation with this guy. And, you know, I don't want to lose I don't want to get crazy and cause a problem here, blah, blah. And he's like, did you apologize to him yet? And I was like, what? He's like, did you apologize to him yet? I'm like, dude, like, there's nothing to apologize for. And he's like, yeah, take a look at that. And, you know, just through pausing and forgetting about him and looking at me, I end up going to the dude and I was like, yo, listen, you know, I totally forget anything that happened. I said, the way I talked to you was inappropriate and disrespectful. And I could have expressed myself to you differently. and that's my fault. I apologize. And like little shifts like that are like little things that create change and bring me forward and keep me changing. Enlarging my spiritual life, I was never like a spiritual person until like, I remember my buddy trying to get me to read the spiritual book the first year of my sobriety, and I just was like, yeah, definitely get it for me. And, I was just trying to organize my life. Finally, I developed this relationship with this power, this universe, this God of my understanding, and now all of a sudden things that I was totally closed off to start hitting me. And little scenarios, and like I read these things or I'm told these stories, and they just make a great deal more sense to me, and I can apply them to my everyday life. And, I used to get so upset when things wouldn't go my way. And looking back, my sponsor tells me, say, he's like, Ray, it's unfortunate, but like sometimes things that are, the things that are best for you don't always feel good, don't always make you happy. And it looks like those times when it was the worst time in my life that got me to change. When my world crumbled, it got me to a new surrender. When I wanted to kill myself, it brought me back to AA. When it brought me back to AA, it brought me closer to God. And so now, like these little stories of, like things that are difficult and affecting me and I don't like and I can't accept, possibly have an underlining meaning to get me to change. And like I'm just remembering this story of like this guy. He talks about this old man in the village won this lotto, and he won this like expensive sports car in the lotto, and everybody gathered at his house to congratulate him. And they're like, "Wow, how lucky you were to win this car." And his response was, "I don't know, maybe." And then like a few weeks later, he's driving this car through town, and a drunk driver runs a red light, smashes into it, destroys the car. This guy ends up nearly dead in the hospital, and all the family and friends gather in the hospital and say, "Wow, what an unfortunate thing to have happened to you." And he says, "I don't know, maybe." And then while in the hospital, there was this torrential rainstorm and created this mudslide that destroyed his house and carried it out to sea. And then all his family and friends gathered, how lucky you were to have been in the hospital during the rainstorm. And he's just like, I don't know, maybe. And like these, I don't want to say silly or stupid, but like these stories like have profound effect on me today. I was not open to stuff like this. To understand that life, the truth is life is difficult. This doesn't bring me to this blessed life. I develop a relationship through myself to going through these steps, which enables me to handle life and accept. And the way I'm able to accept things is by having a different perspective. And in order for me not to return to alcohol, like this guy, this thinking, this perceiver has to change. And it wasn't changing. Like if I could have changed it through outside circumstances, like we've all had really terrible things that have happened to us due to alcohol and other things. If that was sufficient, we would have done it a long time ago. I had to get deep. My reality, it turns out, is inside of me. I was always out there with reality. I always thought you guys out there was reality. That's, I've come to discover is my secondary reality. Out there is created from in here. What's going on here is reflected out there. How I am with myself gets projected out. And when I'm at peace, when I have an understanding and an acceptance of the way things are, my life is flowing nicely. Everything is okay. When I'm selfish, self-seeking, and the inability to accept what life has to offer, my life is chaotic and hectic. And if we can, reflect on what my life looked like and who I was surrounded with when I was drinking, and look at the people who we surround ourselves and who are in the people whose lives we participate with when we're not drinking and trying to live sober and trying to help others. And I want to thank you guys for having me. I feel like I lost my train of thought a little bit along the way there, but I would just like to say, there's no graduation for this. This is as they say, a daily reprieve based on my fit spiritual condition, and just to know that unless I'm trying to grow and go forward with this program recovery, that there's a chance that I could return to the old way. And thank you guys for listening.
Let's thank Ray one more time, please. Epic call. Yeah. Customary for us to form a line and thank our speakers. Like he said, he drove 2 hours here and 2 hours back at his own time and expense just for us. So that's really important. We have a meeting after the meeting here. If you'd like to give us a little hand cleanup, we have to leave, if you remember this, 7 deep, 5 across, the rest go on the rack there. So we got a nice way of closing if you care to join us. And don't forget the meeting after the meeting.